Hey, I'm the coach, Brian Wright. It is May 21st, 2026. It's a Thursday. I said I wasn't going to talk about MVP anymore, but once again, I'm going to spend a coach's corner and I'm going to be talking about MVP. And I'm only doing it for one reason, because between when I said no more and right now, the number came out that there were 17 million views. Okay, so what? 17 million views. What does that actually mean in regards to the community? A couple things. Number one, it means we're going to get another MVP promotion night. Number two, it shows that there is an audience beyond the UFC. The problem with all of this is that I don't think Netflix understands what it did, the value of what they're seeing. I think they're just looking at Jake Paul and Badarian and going, okay, you guys got something, whatever. I do not think Jake Paul is the proper captain for a ship that is pretending to be the future. They're not the future. They're just the financial winners of this temporary situation because they don't have a roster to develop enough depth to have competitive brackets in any division. Now, where I think they have a value is putting on Francis Ngannou versus John Jones. It'll probably happen in 2.5 years when the contract John's on, expires. They're not going to be able to pull him out of the UFC. It's going to take a while, but eventually that'll happen. And then a guy like Mike Perry is somebody that you can continually pull eyeballs around. You're not going to build a division. You're going to just support a fan base. You don't see enough available fighters outside of the UFC roster right now that have a name value or skill set that MVP is going to be able to do anything with. They don't have the depth of relationships that a PFL and a UFC have. Now, I'm going to bring up something that just hit, and that is Scott Coker said he's back. It looks like he got a $60 million plus investment from a group to come back and start a show again. Now, we can say Strikeforce never dies, K1 USA forever, and go down the list of the things that Scott has done over the years, but we do have to remember that the last time that he did an independent promotion that was his origin, not the Bellator sitch, he came in and took over Bellator, and he did a reasonable job with Bellator, got it to a place where it at least was something that could be sold at a profit. The people involved in Bellator absolutely got their money back and probably made some in the way it all went down. Now, Strikeforce, the last time it was relevant, were probably 15 years ago at this point. When you think about when Gina Carano was fighting in Strikeforce, that was a time that the UFC only had a handful of events a year, and they had a small roster. They didn't even have anyone fighting under, I believe, 5. So we didn't have 25, 35, 45. We just had 55 and up. So smaller roster, less shows, still the same large pool of athletes globally that needed a place to go. So a show like Strikeforce was going to get some top tier talent. UFC and Strikeforce absolutely were battling for talent. Managers had options. Fighters had options. Sponsors had multiple places to make investments. That's not 2026. In 2026, the UFC is the dominant talent pool. That is the dominant pathway to get to the dream of being MMA famous. Now, Scott Coker comes back. This is a guy that knows the managers. He knows the trainers. This is a guy that understands how to develop things. He can take regional talent and make it internationally known. That is what he does. He never built anything that had infrastructure. He built things that lasted for a while and then got sold off and everybody made money and then he moved on. That's not a dig. That's proper business. The UFC was a different model. The UFC, they built a foundation, which they put a house on top of. Strikeforce, that was a house that was built on a foundation of sand, basically. It wasn't something that was going to stand the test of time. It was something that was just going to stand the moment, make enough money so that it justifies its existence. And that is business too. And that's okay. And if Scott Coker comes in and does that again, I'm completely fine with it. If Scott Coker comes in and creates Strikeforce 3.0, because Bellator is kind of 2.0, Strikeforce 3.0 uses all of his relationships to put together competitive brackets of people in different weight classes that can tell stories and then can capitalize on what we have found is a very large group of eyeballs that goes beyond Paramount Plus that will watch Netflix. We've got something there. And the UFC is not going to worry about it, but it'll just give us as fans and as coaches and as athletes just more opportunity. And that's a good thing. So I am happy to see Scott Coker come back, and I really hope that he fills the gap that Jake Paul and Badarian are trying to fill. because I just don't believe in the MVP model as a larger scale model. I think it's a great cash in. Again, John Jones, Mike Perry, I think they could do really well. John Jones won't be able to go there for a while, so who knows? If MVP will wait him out. But Mike Perry, that dude should cash in every one of those shows and keep taking out, whatever fighters they can get their hands on. Mike Perry is young enough, he is skilled enough, and he has a fan base enough for that promotion to do something with him. So I hope that continues. Yeah, so there we are with my feelings about MVP still lingering here. But something that's coming up is yesterday, my son is like, yo, it looks like Morales is going to be fighting Islam. And that got me scratching my head a little bit, because I know we have that Philly card coming up and Islam's supposed to be defending the title there. I believe that's August 15th, something like that. Why Garry keeps getting overlooked, a lot of it has to do with the fact that he hasn't fought since last November. And then Prates has had some really phenomenal performances, and Morales has had really good showings. I don't think we can overlook Ian Garry. So if Morales is just trying to force the issue by putting out this post, I get that. That's a little gamesmanship. But I think for the value of the division, I think we have to allow the number one contender to fight the champ, unless there's something we don't know about. If there's an injury there, that's one thing. If it's a timing problem because of circumstance, I get it. But if we're overlooking it because Islam doesn't want to fight him, I don't think that's fair. I don't think Morales has done anything to jump the line. If anyone's going to jump the line, I think it should be Prates, but I still don't even think he should jump the line. I think the fight that we need to see is Ian Garry versus Islam. Islam he's got to do that. That's the fight that he's already solidified, but that's the exclamation mark that really entrenches him as the champ. And then go pick off Prates. Then go pick off Morales if you can get by Garry. But I really think for the rankings to have real validity, if everybody's healthy, I think Ian Garry's the only guy that should get the fight. And I think the only problem here is we just haven't seen him since November when he beat Bilal Muhammad. So if we're going to have rankings, they've got to matter. I think the number one contender should be getting the fight unless they've done it a bunch of times. So if you run into a situation where, number one and the champ, they've done their trilogy, different story, but we should have rankings for a reason. So I really hope the UFC does the right thing here and they get this done. I want to see Ian Garry fight Islam in August. That's a great fight. And then the other fight out there that popped up is Max Holloway versus Conor McGregor. I think that is a very, very good fight for Max. I don't know if there are good fights for Conor anymore. I mean, every fight is good for him financially, but being away as long as he has and going through the things he has lifestyle-wise, I don't know. He wants this fight at 170. That is scary to me. You don't want to cut the weight or you just got too big. That kind of becomes a problem for a guy who started his career at 45. And then you've got Max Holloway, doesn't care to come up because he's just game bred. That dude will fight anybody. But I think it'll be a competitive beginning. And I think Max pulls away the longer it goes. I heard also Conor was looking for a 3-round fight, not a 5. There's just so many signs here that this is just not going to be the Conor that we remember. The amount of time away, I think, will show. And he wasn't showing so fantastic in his last few outings anyway. So I really feel this is a great opportunity for Max to kind of reclaim his spot with the fans. I don't think he really lost anything, but after that last fight, getting dominated on the ground, he does need some kind of spectacular performance to just push him a little bit again. Max is Max. I have nothing but respect for him. I'm a massive fan. Win, lose, or draw, I just feel we have a good time with him. He's the BMF to me when I think about it. I know Charles beat him and he got the belt, but in terms of like the real BMF, Gaethje, he's another one. These are bad motherfuckers, and they're so exciting to watch, win, lose, or draw. So Max fighting Conor, great windfall for him. Ton of exposure. It's going to push him even further forward, and Conor really has to get it done. His back is against the wall. If he loses this, he's going to call for something else. I doubt he's taking his gloves off, putting him in the middle and saying he's done. And if he wins, he's going to be screaming for a title fight. And what? You're going to feed him to Islam at 170? Islam starches Conor every day of the week. I think the UFC would love that because it's kind of the Khabib matchup 2.0, and the amount of trash that Conor will talk and the personal attacks he'll go after. It's insane. I can't even think of how crazy the drama would be there. Conor versus Islam, it's just so hard to think of. I mean, how is Khabib going to even control himself in a situation like that? That's like World War III right there. but I don't see Conor getting past Max. I think that International Fight Week is stuck. They're in a bad position because the White House card is really using up the available superstars. And then now you're going to have a little bit of a pause because you've got Pereira, Gane, Topuria. Gaethje's probably done after this, even if he wins. He said he's going to defend. Who knows? Is Sean O'Malley, Bo Nickel. You got a lot of guys that are going to be on the shelf for a couple months after this. And so now how do you figure out getting through International Fight Week? By August, we start to recover. Then we're kind of back to normal by September, where the normal cycle of champs will start going again. So it'll be a weird moment. And then once the UFC starts rolling, it's just going to be big card after big card after big card. 1, 2 is that I'm interested. We've got Gable Steveson coming in International Fight Week. Because of the level of opponent that he's got, I feel that the promotion's not really there. There's a lot of things overshadowing him stepping into the octagon. I think if he has a spectacular RAF, that'll help get the conversation started. I believe that's coming up in about 10 days. That'll start getting things moving. And then as we get closer, then it's going to be, okay, the future of the heavyweight division could be stepping in here. And he very easily could be the future of the division because the division is so weak right now. So the curiosity there will be, can Gable rise to the moment, starch this guy, and put everybody on notice? And then over the next 2 to 3 fights, is he going to be tested? Is he going to be developed? Are we going to really see him become what he possibly could? So the storylines are starting to be set. Again, I hope Islam and Ian Garry do fight. And then I hope Islam goes on the tour of establishing himself as one of the greatest 170-pounders of all time. He's got 3 guys that if he beats, he probably will go down as the greatest 170-pound champ because he has Murderer's Row waiting for him. If he can beat Ian Garry, Prates, and Morales, if he can beat those 3, the diversity in their skill sets and the challenges that they represent, that puts him, for me, on the Mount Rushmore of 170. Yeah, so I'm hoping we get to see this. And if Ian Garry beats him, we'll definitely have a rematch. We'll definitely get a nice trilogy out of that. Let Prates and Morales fight. If Morales steps in and gets beat, well, then Gary's got to get it. I don't know what's going on there. It's so strange where we just keep seeing, Gary's like getting the push and then that pullback, the push and the pullback. I think a lot of it's because the fans just don't like him. He's unlikable in so many different ways. If you're purely on record and skill, he's just the guy who should be getting the damn fight. So, yeah. I don't really have too much else to go over today. MVP just keeps dominating the conversation because of the weirdness and the weird fan thing. You have the fans that no matter what the UFC does, they hate it. And then you have the other fans that just love the UFC so much, they hate everything else. And we just get into these like toxic conversations, you don't know what you're talking about kind of crap from both sides when there really is structural business being done here. The UFC and MVP both are protecting their brands. UFC really has nothing to protect. They just have to do business. MVP's trying to position themselves as something that they're not and they're never going to be. And then the wild card now is Scott Coker stepping back in. What's he bringing to the table and how's that going to affect the landscape? And then you've got PFL, who's got a new CEO who's trying to reorganize the whole thing. And they're sitting there on ESPN and nobody's really watching and it's just sitting out there. They're putting on good shows. They're having great fights. They're developing real talent. A lot of the talent is jumping ship and hopping over to the UFC once it gets developed because the PFL just can't compete with the eyeballs for it. But the PFL keeps just sitting there. If they can get their act together from a promotional standpoint, get the fans to buy in a little bit, they could be the legit number 2. But Scott Coker coming in with a big investment kind of reads like the real number 2 to me before it even started. I think Scott's the guy that's going to come in and leverage what he's done to build something rather quickly that will bring enough attention and opportunity to be a real number 2. So Scott could kill the PFL, to be honest, because if I'm an athlete now and I'm looking at, because again, it's all about pay. If I'm a fighter and I'm looking at pay, PFL and the UFC are the best available pay for a guy on the way up. MVP is the best pay outside the UFC for established names. I mean, they say they've got that $40,000 for somebody that's starting out, but they're not putting on enough shows to make that even worth it right now. And it's not enough of a development path to make that pay worth it right now in a conversation against what UFC PFL provide. You go to the PFL, they pay very good money for the level of guys that they bring in. It's a clear path to a title. The title has value to it. The title is something you could leverage into a UFC career eventually without wasting your prime years. It's a great developmental league right now. They wish they were not a developmental league. They were an established league, but that is what it is. But yeah, I'm kind of rambling at this point, but UFC, PFL, interesting structure. Scott Coker coming in. I'm really waiting to see how the news starts following through over the next couple of days to see what all this actually means, to see what kind of level Scott's coming with, what fighters he's going to bring to the table. Is he going to pull anybody from the UFC? Is he going to rely on his old roster of guys that are now old? Or is he going to use those guys to pick up their proteges, develop something, and then create the drama and the entertainment that we come to MMA for? All right, this is Brian Wright. I'm done. It's Thursday. I've got things to do. I hope you have a phenomenal Memorial Day. I don't know what fights are on this weekend, but there's going to be a fight somewhere. Let me know what I'm missing out on and tell me what I should be tuning in on. All right, peace.